settle down. The question that haunts the dungeons of your mind after the battle is over is not what they did. You have the case files for that. You have the receipts, the screenshots, the memories branded onto your soul like a dark mark. The question that festers, that poisons your sleep and turns your blood to ice is why. Why are they like this? What monstrous alchemy, what failed potion, what cursed ingredient creates a person capable of such casual, systemic cruelty? Was she born a monster, or was she made one? Today, we conduct an autopsy on the narcissist's soul, not to excuse their evil. Never. We do this to expose it, to understand its mechanics, to render its power over you utterly obsolete. Because when you understand how the weapon was forged, you are no longer mystified by the wound it creates. Let us begin with the first, coldest possibility: nature, the inherited poison. You must accept that some souls are simply born cracked. Science, in its muggle fashion, has provided evidence for this. Studies on twins, separated at birth but raised in different cauldrons, have shown a chilling heritability for narcissistic traits: grandiosity, entitlement, a profound lack of empathy. These are not merely bad habits. They can be encoded into the very fiber of their being, a poison passed down through the bloodline. Neuroscientists, those modern-day diviners, have peered into the brains of narcissists and found deficiencies. Less gray matter in the prefrontal cortex, the very seat of empathy and emotional regulation. Structural abnormalities in the insular cortex, the part of the brain that allows you to feel not just your own pain, but the pain you inflict on others. Imagine moving through the world utterly blind to the consequences of your actions. Imagine seeing another person's agony not as a tragedy, but as a faint, uninteresting noise in the distance. This was the blankness in her eyes during the 7-year deception. This was the cold detachment she displayed when you suffered a medical emergency. A moment when any human with a functioning soul would have shown an ounce of care. This was the void you stared into. Evolutionary psychologists propose an even bleaker theory: that narcissism can be an adaptive strategy, a risky, parasitic method of survival that prioritizes mating success and resource acquisition above all else. They are social predators. Their charm is the lure, their love bombing is the trap, and their victims are the prey. If this is the case, then you were never dealing with a flawed person. You were dealing with a different species altogether, a creature hardwired for consumption, and your love, your loyalty, your resources were simply its next meal. But nature is only half of the grimoire. The most potent poisons are often brewed, not born. This brings us to nurture, the corrupted cauldron. The environment of a narcissist's childhood is almost always a place of profound distortion. There are two primary paths that forge a narcissist in the fires of youth. They appear to be opposites, but they lead to the exact same destination: a hollow core wrapped in a grandiose, false self. The first path is the golden child, the overvalued prince or princess. This is the child who is not loved, but worshipped. Every mediocre drawing, is hailed as a masterpiece. Every selfish demand is met with fawning praise. They are taught they are special, not for what they do, but for who they are. They learn that rules are for lesser beings, that accountability is an insult to their inherent superiority. Their parents do not see a child to be guided. They see an extension of their own ego, a trophy to be polished and displayed. This child learns a catastrophic lesson. Love is not connection. It is adoration. It is supply. And when they enter the adult world and find that others will not worship them unconditionally, they do not adjust their worldview. They declare war on reality itself. They seek out partners who will serve as a permanent audience. They demand the same unending praise they received as a child, and when it is not given, they react with incandescent rage. Does this sound familiar? Her fury when you dared to call her a liar, a cheater. It was not the indignation of the falsely accused. It was the shock of a goddess whose divinity was being questioned by a mere mortal. Her birthday gift to you, an elaborate lie about cancelled items, while she sat on a hoard of her own money, was not just selfish. It was the act of a queen who believes her subjects deserve nothing but the privilege of her presence. The second path is darker, more tragic, but it creates a creature just as dangerous. This is the abused child, the devalued ghost. This is the child who experiences the opposite of worship. They endure neglect, emotional, physical, or sexual abuse. A childhood of relentless criticism and coldness. The message they receive is not "you are special." The message is "you are worthless." You are unlovable. You do not matter. This pain is unbearable for a developing soul. And so, to survive, the child performs a desperate act of psychological alchemy. They split their own psyche in two. The real self, the small, terrified, wounded child who feels worthless, is locked away in a deep, dark dungeon of the mind, exiled. And to protect this fragile, hidden self, the child creates a replacement, a new self, a false self. This self is everything the real self is not. It is grandiose. It is perfect. It is invulnerable. It is superior. It is a fortress built to withstand a lifetime of pain. This is the origin of the vulnerable or covert narcissist. They appear sensitive, even shy. But beneath the surface, that grandiose monster, born of trauma, is raging. It craves constant validation to prove the exiled child was wrong. It is hypersensitive to any perceived slight, as criticism threatens to crumble the fortress walls and expose the terrified prisoner within. They create an identity around being a victim, because it is the only identity that ever felt true. This explains the paradox, the way she could systematically betray you for years, yet paint herself as the one who was suffering. Her life with you was a true nightmare, she told the other man, because in her warped reality, your expectation of loyalty was an attack. Your demand for honesty was a form of abuse. Your existence was a constant threat to her carefully constructed lie. The psychoanalyst Otto Kernberg, a muggle with surprisingly sharp insight into the dark arts of the mind, described this perfectly. He argued that the pathological narcissist is trapped in a state of infantile rage and envy. They had a parent, usually a mother, who was cold, unempathetic, and secretly devaluing. The child, in defense, fuses their idealized image of themselves with the idealized image of a perfect, loving parent they never had. This creates what Kernberg called the pathological grandiose self. This false self is a fragile bubble. Internally, they are a sea of rage at the mother who failed them, and a bottomless envy for anyone who seems to possess the love and wholeness they lack. This is why they must devalue you. They must destroy what you have, your loyalty, your integrity, your capacity for real love, because to acknowledge it would be to acknowledge their own profound emptiness. It would force them to feel the full, screaming force of their own envy. So, nature or nurture? The answer, as with all potent potions, is that it is a synthesis. It is the flawed ingredient of nature, brewed in the corrupted cauldron of nurture. A genetic predisposition to low empathy, combined with a childhood of either excessive praise or traumatic abuse, creates the final, unstable concoction. A person who looks human, who can mimic the emotions of love, remorse, and compassion with chilling accuracy, but who is, at their core, a hollow shell, driven by an insatiable hunger for validation. They are a dementor, created not in Azkaban, but in the sterile quiet of a loveless nursery. I will say this one last time. Understanding the genesis of the monster does not mean you are required to pity it. You do not pity the plague. You do not forgive the poison. You study it. You understand its properties. You learn to recognize its scent, its texture, its bitter taste, so that you may brew the antidote. The antidote is your knowledge, your awareness, your refusal to ever again mistake a carefully crafted illusion for a human soul. Her story, her creation, is a tragedy of its own making, but it is not your tragedy to fix. You were collateral damage in a war that began long before you ever met her. Your only responsibility now is to the survivor, to the man who was forged in the fires of her pathology and emerged not as ash, but as tempered steel. Lesson is over.